We often think about the global water crisis in, very human terms, the struggle for clean drinking water. But if you step back, you see this staggering economic reality, too. Over 40% of the world is grappling with severe water scarcity. And that number, well, it has huge implications for businesses, for our whole global economy.
Absolutely, it really does.
And you're tuning in because you want to get smart, fast on these big trends. And this one is, frankly, massive.
It really is. Water isn't just, survival fuel. It's the absolute lifeblood of industry. Think agriculture, manufacturing, energy. They all need it.
Right.
So when you have that much scarcity, those economic shockwaves, they're just inevitable.
And that brings us right to today's deep dive.
Yeah.
We're looking at Jash Engineering. They're a key player crafting these water engineering systems and solutions.
And doing it quite successfully lately.
Exactly. Their recent performance has been really eye-catching. We're talking about a compound annual growth rate that's the average yearly growth of 26% in revenue. And get this, 41% in profit after tax between fiscal 22 and the projection for 25.
Wow, those are strong numbers, 41% on the bottom line.
Right. So our mission today, and we're drawing from an analysis by Systematics Institutional Equities here, is to really unpack what's fueling this success and, what it tells us about tackling these global water challenges head on.
Exactly. We need to go beyond just the numbers, understand the core drivers behind Jash Engineering's growth, where they sit in this really critical market and, the broader industry forces at play.
So there's not just what they're doing.
No. It's why it seems to be proving so effective right now in today's world.
Okay, let's dive in then. The report gives Jash a BUI rating right off the bat. And a key reason they cite is decisive leadership and competent governance.
Which can sound a bit like, standard corporate speak.
It can, yeah. But they back it up. They point out that Jash has consistently beaten its own financial forecasts. Now, what's the real significance there when a company regularly beats its own targets?
Well, what's interesting, I think, is that it suggests a leadership team that really has a strong grasp of their market.
Right.
And crucially, the ability to execute their plans effectively.
Okay.
Consistently outperforming your own guidance. It signals not just ambition, but also a pretty realistic understanding of your capabilities and the market dynamics. Yeah. It definitely builds confidence in their strategic direction.
Right. It's not just wishful thinking. Now, looking beyond the company itself, the report highlights these strong industry tailwinds. And this is where it gets really, really stark when we talk about the global water crunch. Yeah. Look at this figure. In India, the per capita availability of water has just plummeted from over 5,000 cubic meters back in 1951 to just over 1,300 in the year 2000. And the prediction, India will be classified as water scarce by 2050. That's a huge shift.
That kind of dramatic decline, it just really underscores the escalating pressure on water resources, doesn't it? Especially in a country with India's population and, well, its growth trajectory.
Yeah.
When you see per capita water availability shrink like that, it just screams for, innovative solutions in water management, efficient treatment, effective reuse.
It's not just environmental anymore.
No, not at all. It has massive implications for agriculture, for industrial output, for the overall economic stability of the entire nation.
And this isn't just an India story, is it? I mean, the report also points to this massive projected expansion of the global water and wastewater treatment markets.
That's right.
We're looking at a jump from around, $295 billion in 2024 to over $632 billion by 2035. That's more than double.
Yeah, it is.
That kind of growth suggests a worldwide acknowledgement of just how urgent the need for investment is here. What's driving that global surge?
Well, if you connect it to the bigger picture, that doubling of the market, it reflects a global consensus, really. Our current ways of managing water, they're just not sustainable. Right.
You've got factors like growing populations, industries expanding everywhere, and, the undeniable impacts of climate change.
Yeah.
It's all converging. It creates this unprecedented demand for clean water and, just as importantly, effective ways to handle wastewater.
So this market growth isn't just a prediction.
No, it's very much a response to a critical global challenge.
So how is Jash positioning itself to sort of ride these waves? A key strategy the report highlights is their robust capacity expansion. They seem to be seriously beefing up their physical infrastructure, both in India and internationally. Let's start domestically. They've got units 1 and 2, which would generate, up to 4.5 billion rupees in revenue. Then units 3 and 4, a potential of 2.75 billion. Plus, a new plant in Chennai just opened in May 25,
Okay.
expected to add another billion rupees annually. And they're not stopping. Building another unit opposite Unit 4, due Feb 26, looking at another 1 to 1.25 billion potential. I mean, that's a substantial ramp up in their ability to produce. What's the strategic advantage of expanding that fast? Well, what's fascinating there is how that aggressive domestic expansion directly tackles the growing needs within India. By setting up these facilities strategically, they're not just boosting production volume,
Okay.
they're also getting better at responding to local demands and probably cutting down on logistical headaches. This kind of proactive investment in infrastructure, it really positions them to grab a bigger piece of that growing Indian market pie.
And they're not just looking inwards, are they? Their international plans look pretty ambitious, too. They bought waterfront fluid controls in the UK.
Right, gives them that European foothold.
Yeah, and they're adding gate manufacturing capacity in Glasgow. But what really jumps out is the U.S. plan. An office in Houston, planned for Feb 26, then a manufacturing facility nearby, operational maybe by 2028,
Huh.
targeting the southern U.S. specifically.
Mhm.
Why is that U.S. expansion such a big deal?
Oh, it's a very strategic move. The U.S. market, I mean, it's mature, yes, but it still has significant opportunities,
Yes,
especially for specialized players like Jash. Setting up local manufacturing, particularly in a growing area like the southern U.S., that gives them advantages. Things like responding faster to local regs, building relationships with U.S. clients, maybe even streamlining their supply chain for North America.
And the UK buy.
Similar logic, really. It's a crucial entry point into the European market. Lets them tap into different regulations, different client bases over there.
So, looking at both domestic and international growth, this dual focus, what does it tell us about Jash's bigger strategy?
If you connect it all, it really points to a well-diversified growth strategy, doesn't it? By expanding in both high-growth emerging markets like India and more established international ones.
They're hedging their bets.
Exactly. They're reducing reliance on any single region.
Hmm.
And the emphasis on localized production, not just exporting everything from India. That suggests a long-term commitment to these markets. Plus, it might help them navigate, tricky geopolitical stuff or trade issues down the line.
Makes sense. The report also emphasizes innovation and geographical expansion. On innovation, Jash seems pretty consistent. 5 new products launched in fiscal 24 alone, testing a new water gate design right now. And there's optimism around their filter wheels product. Apparently aligns well with national wastewater treatment needs. How vital is that continuous innovation in this industry?
Oh, it's absolutely vital. You have to keep innovating in water engineering. The challenges scarcity, wastewater, we're constantly evolving. They demand new, more efficient tech.
Right.
So Jash focusing on regular product development, especially something like filter wheels that hits those national mandates, it suggests they're not just keeping up, they're proactively developing solutions for what's coming next. That can give them a real competitive edge.
And geographically, beyond the UK and US, they're pushing into Southeast Asia too. Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Laos, Cambodia.
A growing region for infrastructure.
Yeah, and they've already bagged a $1 million order in Vietnam. Now, that might seem relatively small now, but what's the significance of expanding into these markets?
Well, what's interesting there is, yeah, $1 million isn't huge in their overall revenue context, but it's a really important first step, right?
Getting a foot in the door.
Exactly. Establishing a presence in these fast-growing Southeast Asian economies. These places often have significant water infrastructure gaps, and they're likely to see huge investment in water and wastewater treatment in the coming years. Getting in now could position Jash for some serious long-term growth as those markets develop.
Okay, now let's dig into this Rodney Hunt turnaround. The report really flags this as a key success. So for people who don't know, Jash bought this U.S. brand back in 2016, paid about $4 million, relatively modest.
Yeah, seemed like a smart way into North America.
Right, and Rodney Hunt has this big 60,000 square foot manufacturing plant in Massachusetts. So how did this acquisition actually pan out for Jash?
Well, looking back, it seems like a really astute strategic call. By buying an established U.S. name with existing manufacturing,
They shortcut the process.
precisely, they got immediate access to the North American market, avoided all the time and expensive building from scratch, and the numbers show it worked. Rodney Hunt pulled in 2.2 billion rupees in revenue in FY24.
Okay.
And in the first 9 months of FY25, revenue was up 35% year over year to 1.74 billion rupees. With a decent profit after tax, too, 57 million rupees. That definitely signals a successful turnaround.
And it's not just looking back. Management has set a really ambitious target for Rodney Hunt, $75 million. That's roughly 6.5 billion rupees within the next 4 years. That's a huge growth expectation.
It is, and it really underscores management's confidence, doesn't it? Confidence in the North American market potential and confidence in their ability to leverage the Rodney Hunt brand plus Jash's own expertise and resources to really scale things up.
If they hit that number,
If they hit that, Rodney Hunt becomes a massive contributor to Jash's overall bottom line and cements their position in a really critical global market.
and what's really striking, tying back to the order book, over half of Jash's current orders, which is around 8.1 billion rupees total,
Yeah.
over half comes from outside India. And a huge chunk of that 3.7 billion rupees is specifically from Rodney Hunt. That just hammers home how pivotal that acquisition is now.
It absolutely does. It highlights, first, the success of that turnaround, and second, the growing importance of international markets for Jash's whole business mix.
Diversification in action.
Right. Having most orders from exports diversifies revenue, yes, but it also gives them some cushion against, ups and downs in the Indian domestic market. And Rodney Hunt's big contribution, it just validates that whole strategy of expanding through smart acquisitions.
Let's circle back to those strong industry tailwinds, because the report goes deeper here. We touched on India's water scarcity.
Yeah, the 18% of world population, only 4% of fresh water.
Exactly. And only about a third of its wastewater gets treated. The situation is critical. How does Jash's business model really align with tackling these specific challenges in India?
Well, it's a stark picture, isn't it? And it underscores the immense opportunity for companies like Jash. They provide solutions in exactly these areas: wastewater reuse, advanced treatment tech, decentralized water infrastructure.
Things India desperately needs.
Precisely. And the increasing global demand for water driven by population, industry, climate change, it just creates this powerful, sustained demand for the very solutions Jash offers.
And the numbers really paint that picture globally, too. The wastewater treatment market worldwide, projected to grow at, 7.17% CGR.
Pretty healthy growth.
Yeah. And drilling down, industrial wastewater treatment growing at 6.5% annually. But water reuse and recycling, that's expected to grow even faster, 11% a year.
That reuse figure is interesting, shows the shift in thinking.
Right. Plus, the sheer amount of wastewater being generated globally is set to increase significantly, 24% by 2030, 51% by 2050, they estimate. And a lot of that will likely stay untreated, which is a problem, but also a massive potential market.
These robust growth rates, they signal a fundamental shift, I think. We're starting to see wastewater not just as a problem to get rid of, but as a valuable resource, something to be managed, treated, reused effectively.
And the fact that so much still goes untreated.
That just highlights the vast unmet need, doesn't it? And the huge potential for expansion for companies offering treatment solutions. The growth in industrial treatment and reuse specifically points to, growing awareness, stricter rules around industrial discharge, and just a general push for sustainable water practice.
Okay, focusing back on India itself, its own wastewater treatment market is estimated at $9.64 billion this year, 2024, projected to nearly double to $18.63 billion by 2033. That's a 7.6% annual growth rate.
Again, strong domestic growth.
And the government seems really engaged. You have initiatives like PMKSY and KOM, the Big Mami Ganj project, Jal Jeevan Mission, with serious money behind them. Like Jal Jeevan Mission got allocated 670 billion rupees for fiscal 26. How do these government pushes act as tailwinds for a company like Jash?
Well, the Indian government putting such strong emphasis on water management through all these programs and backing it with substantial cash, that provides a significant boost to the whole water infrastructure sector.
Creates demand directly.
Exactly. These initiatives create direct demand for the kinds of engineering solutions Jash provides. It fosters a really favorable domestic market and basically provides a pipeline of potential projects for them.
Okay, shifting gears to the U.S. again. Their wastewater market was valued at $113.8 billion in 2023. Projected to grow at 6.9% annually, hitting $206.6 billion by 2032.
Another huge market.
Yeah. And the drivers there seem a bit different. Aging infrastructure needing replacement is a big one, plus increasingly tough environmental regulations. That's pushing demand for more advanced methods, like tertiary treatment and even desalination. How does Rodney Hunt, as a part of Jash, fit into that dynamic?
The U.S. market, With its focus on upgrades and hitting higher standards, it's prime territory for a company like Rodney Hunt.
Because they're already established.
Right, their established presence, the manufacturing base, their expertise potentially in some of these more advanced technologies, it positions them really well to capitalize on that demand for upgrades and new, more efficient systems. The shift towards things like tertiary treatment and desalination, that creates a need for specialized gear and know-how, which Rodney Hunt can offer.
And finally, one more region the report touches on, the Middle East, emerging as a key player in reuse and desalination. A projected market of $44.5 billion by 2030, growing at about 4.1% a year.
Facing extreme scarcity there, of course.
Exactly. And countries like Saudi Arabia are actually mandating the reuse of treated sewage effluent. That's a pretty significant policy move. What does this Middle East trend tell us about the global picture?
Well, the Middle East, facing some of the world's most severe water scarcity, they're really proactively adopting these innovative solutions. Large-scale desalination, widespread wastewater reuse, these are critical parts of their water security strategy now.
Not just optional extras.
Not at all.
Ah,
And government mandates, like the Saudi one, they create significant guaranteed demand for advanced treatment tech and infrastructure. So this region is another really important growth engine for the global water market. And it just highlights how wastewater is increasingly seen worldwide as a valuable resource, not just waste.
Okay, so all of this paints a really compelling picture, doesn't it? A company operating in a sector with these incredibly powerful underlying growth drivers. Let's look at Jash's financials now and how the market sees them.
Right, the numbers.
The report highlights strong revenue growth, around 40% in fiscal 25, hitting 7.4 billion rupees. And they project 8.6 billion for fiscal 26, backed by that solid order book we talked about. What does that kind of top-line growth signal?
Well, that kind of significant revenue growth really demonstrates Jash's ability to translate those favorable market conditions and their own strategic moves into actual, tangible financial results.
They're executing.
They're executing. And that strong order book, it gives a solid foundation for future revenue, reinforces those growth projections for next year. The fact that so much of it is exports also points to their growing global reach and competitiveness.
And it's not just sales growth, right? The report points to improving profitability, too. Their EBITDA margin, that earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization metric.
Key measure of operational profit.
Yeah. It went from 13.3% in FY22 up to over 19% in FY24, and they expect further improvement. Seems to be driven by a mix of things. The types of products they sell, efficiencies from scaling up, contribution from those higher margin export markets, maybe even that disfilter product line. Why is expanding profitability so important here?
Well, seeing an expanding EBITDA margin alongside strong revenue growth, that's a very encouraging sign. It shows a healthy, well-managed business.
Not just buying revenue.
Exactly. It indicates Jash isn't just growing the top line, they're also getting more efficient operationally, which leads to better profits. The favorable product mix shift towards higher value stuff, the economies of scale from expanding capacity, and potentially better margins from exports, it all feeds into this positive trend. And yeah, the disfilter segment, especially if they localize manufacturing, could further boost those margins.
So overall, the report projects a strong compound annual growth rate, 20% for revenue, and actually over 20% for both EBITDA and profit after tax between the projections for FY25 and FY27.
Consistent growth across the board.
Yeah. They also highlight a robust return on capital employed, ROCE, how well they use capital to make profit, expected to hit over 26% by FY27. These are pretty impressive financial projections. What do they tell us about the outlook?
They really just underscore the strong growth trajectory Jash seems to be on, and that healthy ROCE. It indicates they're not only growing profitably, but also deploying their capital efficiently to generate good returns for investors. That's a key sign of a well-managed, financially sound business.
Okay, so bringing it all together, the report concludes with that BUY rating, target price, 763 rupees per share, based on a price-to-earnings ratio of 30 times their projected FY27 earnings.
A premium multiple.
A premium multiple, yeah. And they justify it by pointing to Jash's market leadership, the positive industry outlook, that strong order backlog, the quality of the management team, and that robust growth path we've just discussed. Why would analysts assign a premium like that?
Well, that valuation, that multiple, it reflects the analyst's confidence, really. Confidence in Jash's ability to keep capitalizing on these strong market trends and to effectively execute their growth plans. The premium suggests the market recognizes the company's strong fundamentals, its leading position in a critical, growing sector, and fundamentally its potential for sustained high growth in the years ahead.
So, summarizing our deep dive today, it seems pretty clear that Jash Engineering is, well, strategically positioned to benefit significantly from this escalating global water crisis and the resulting surge in investment in water and wastewater treatment infrastructure.
Yeah, that seems fair.
Their proactive expansion, both domestic and international, their focus on innovation, the geographical diversification, including that really successful Rodney Hunt turnaround, plus their strong financial performance. It certainly makes them a compelling player in this incredibly important sector.
Absolutely. And, when you think about the bigger picture here, we're looking at a company that isn't just focused on business growth. They're also playing a vital role in tackling one of humanity's most critical challenges,
Right.
ensuring access to clean water.
Right.
It really makes you consider the crucial role that investment and innovation in this whole space will play, how it'll shape the future of resource management, global sustainability. It kind of prompts you to think, what other companies, what other technologies are emerging out there, and how might they all collectively shape this evolving landscape?